I'm just quite fascinated, I'll say, because the last time I think I was with biosemiotics was in Siena, I think, with Jesper Hoffmeyer. You might have been there actually, and maybe Khaledi as well, I'm not sure. In 2005, I think that it was, I don't know if it was gatherings, it was forming, but it was in relation to semiotics, just normal, let's say, general semiotics. And since then, I see that biosemiotics has grown and it is more varied, let's say. There are more, it's very transversal. There's a greater presence now of not just people coming from the human sciences, but from the hard sciences, the natural sciences. So very, very interesting, I must say. I will be speaking from the point of looking at, let's say, phenomena in not anthroposemiosis, but anthroposociosemiosis, fully aware of the connection with biosemiosis. This is where I suppose my concept of translation comes from. So let's have a look here. Yes, so I gave a title, which is Translation is Life, a semiotic approach to global biosemiotics. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to get my bottle of water. So translation, as we know, has commonly been used to refer to the transfer from one language to another. Like many words that we use, these words are plurivocal, polylogic. Translation means many things. It's not. Today we know. Thanks to biosemiotics as well, and that project that I launched at the beginning of the century, Translation, where for the first time we had people coming from different fields talking about translation, biologists, mathematicians, literary theorists, philosophers, so forth and so forth. Since then, there has been a lot of developments in the field of translation, and now we are very ready to recognize the plurality of translation. So translation, like many other words, are plurivocal, polysemic, like the word itself, language. I was thinking as we were talking, language. What is language? Language is not only one thing, obviously, just as meaning is not only one thing. We're talking about very complex realities. But look at if we go back and look at interlingual translation, for example, look at the word language. In English, we have language, right? In Italian, that word is interpreted, delivered with two words, lingua or linguaggi, lingua, linguaggio. You're either talking about lingua or you're talking about linguaggio. In English, we don't get that message at all because it's only one word, language. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about lingua or are we talking about linguaggio? In French, are we talking about langue or are we talking about langage, etc., etc.? The same with meaning, obviously, from my point of view, from the point of view of the work that I've done, reading certain authors, which I hope to be able to mention to you. Meaning in anthroposociosemiosis has many meanings. So if we want to remember, where's Devon? Devon Schiller, where are you? Eccolo. Victoria, we're doing a book together on Victoria Welby. Victoria Welby published a book called What is Meaning in 1903. And when I was listening to Rebecca, is she here from this morning? Ciao, Rebecca. So when I was listening to her, I almost felt as though I was listening to Victoria Welby because you were translating superbly, creating this dialogue between different fields of knowledge. In fact, today they've introduced the term inter-epistemic translation, this contact dialogue between different fields of knowledge, different value systems, different cultures, multimodality, modality, etc., etc. So Victoria Welby developed a theory of meaning, talking to the life sciences, to chemistry, to physics, politics, economics, etc., and distinguished between, in her world, in her language, the language of significs, because she introduces a new term to name her theory of meaning. She distinguishes between sense, meaning, and significance, where sense has to do with meaning connected to the body, to the sense, to the senses. She speaks about the sensuous, But then you've got Charles Morris. He's been named a few times here, and it really opens my heart. I am his translator. I've translated him into Italian, just as I've translated Seeberg into Italian and Welby. Charles Morris distinguishes between signification and significance, right? And then, of course, Peirce with his distinction between the three kinds of interpretants, which he associates to Welby in his correspondence with Welby to her meaning tribe. But this is not what I'm supposed to be talking about. So I said to myself, I'll read because otherwise I'll digress, and that's what's happening. So back to us, let's say. Yes, so I gave this title "Translation is Life" because the sign is in translation. I mean, this is the whole point. There is no sign without another sign that is the interpreting of the dynamics, apart from whether we're talking about binary or triadic, binarism or triadicity. We're talking about interaction among parts. I could even say there is no such thing as a sign if not in a given moment. By abstraction, for the sake of abstraction analysis, the sign is a combination of different parts that are interacting and change parts as semiosis continues. The unending deferral described by Peirce from one sign to the next sign to the next sign and so forth. So the material of life, the material of language is sign material. There is other material as well, certainly. But from my point of view, I'm looking at this material from the point of view of its sign nature, its materialistic sign nature. The sign is in translation. If we don't have another sign, we can't create meaning. And this is an ongoing process. As well, in human communication, for example, we communicate. As we communicate, we are expliciting meanings, we're expliciting signs. And in the very moment that I explicit meaning, there's more implicit meaning. And thanks to this incredible situation of ambiguity and vagueness, which is structural to communication, meaning is generated and continues to be generated, etc., etc. So I'm not going to delve too much on translation. I want to get on with the rest, which I'll just say this. Let's have a look. Yes, so translation is not merely a linguistic or cultural process. The condition foregrounding such thing as plurilingualism, multiculturalism, and living together. But is a biosemiotic process constitutive of life itself. Life is in translation. The moment we stop translation, like when we throw a bomb on a city, we interrupt translation, we interrupt a form of life. So translation is necessary if life is to flourish under all its aspects in nature and in culture. However, as regards human semiosis, with its inevitable implications for semiosis overall, translation today in the context of globalization, which is globalization, right, which is the era of communication. But what are we talking about? Communication means many things. So if I'm talking about globalization, I'm talking about communication. We could call it communication production, a form of communication that is completely, totally subservient to the capitalist market, to capitalism, because we're living in extreme capitalism today. It is invasive, it's everywhere, and capitalism, our economic systems, our economic and political systems converge with our communication systems. Just think about what is happening with social media, for example. But communication is not only via social media, it's also via pipelines, etc., etc. Communication production. We're looking at communication in globalization, which is trapped and embroiled in mechanisms connected with ideology. This is an aspect I'm very interested in looking at. Ideology. We're talking about communication, language, meaning in anthroposociosemiosis in human society. I do not dare speak as a biologist because I am not. So talking about communication in the human world, and which also means the way we do science, the way we look at the world, we cannot not talk about ideology and values, the connection between science and values. Science are not neutral. When we use science in the human world, in human society, inevitably, as Mikhail Bakhtin says, signs are accentuated, intonated. There's a point of view in our language. There's a point of view, our point of view in the way we communicate and what we communicate and how we communicate. Remember also the power of vagueness, ambiguity, and the implicit reference with respect to the explicit. There are always implicit reference in our discourse if we are communicating. So problems like ideology, control, commodification, alienation. I examine how dominant communication, namely communication production today, dominant communications, communication production, renders translation functional to replication of the world. Replication means replication of the same. Not generation and regeneration of life, but replication of the same, of the world as it is. And here the category of identity is fundamental, but I won't say that now. So this world, the same world ever and over again, undermining its dialogical, creative and disalienating potential, together and beyond the biosemiotical drive for life. So I'll just very quickly explain, I will. Replication, reproduction, this is a condition for communication and production to continue, where we're in big trouble worldwide. I cannot sit here and not mention that the world is a world of war. We want to name, there are too many wars. There have been wars ongoing. War has never stopped. We have two big things under our noses, under our eyes at the moment, which is Russia and Ukraine, Israel and Palestine. But Sudan, but in the past, Vietnam, but wars are ongoing in the world and have never stopped. And now we are at a particularly critical time. And this war is connected with, these wars are connected inevitably with ideology and today with the market, with the financial, economical system that characterizes globalization. There is no escape, and there is no escape if you don't want to escape. I do. The point is that the system, the global communication dominant system, is interested in reproducing the same, is completely hooked on its identity. And this is another very important concept, the concept of what is identity. Identity is not a compact entity. Identity, as Charles Peirce told us, and he's right, has alterity at its heart. If there is an identity, there is an alterity. Speaking in sign language, of course, if we are sign material, the material of sign is construed in relationships with various parts and is construed around alterity. Then what happens? You get Charles Morris, for example, explains very simply. Charles Morris invented the dialogue between biology and semiotics at the beginning of the 20th century. He did a dissertation in 1926 called Symbolism and Reality, which was only published in 1981 in German, not even in English. Charles Morris, who was Thomas Sebeok's master teacher. Thomas Sebeok invented zoosemiotics, global semiotics, biosemiotics, etc., etc. It's part of our history, right? Morris has written several books. Some are technical books in semiotics. Others look at more at the relationship between signs and values. Remember, he is author of a book called Signification and Significance, where he thematizes this relationship between signs and values. And now I've forgotten why. Oh, yes. So he writes a book, not a technical semiotical book, but a book to do more with psychology, semiotics, philosophy, psychology. He was a reader of Zen philosophy, and he wrote wisdom poetry. He loved to write poetry, and he publishes a book in 1948 entitled The Open Self, L'Io Aperto, which I have translated into Italian. The Open Self, the Open Self. So there he explains very well what identity is in his language. Identity, which is a plurality of alterities, let's say, right? And when does an identity, as a psychologist who was doing research in hospitals, mental institutions, when does an identity, a subject get sick? When it doesn't recognize its different alterities, its different faces, when he stops translation from one to the other of the different faces constituting an identity. This is Charles Morris. And in that book, by the way, 1948, he says, woe to America. If I were God, thumbs down on New York. America, he loved his America. He was an American and he loved his America. But in 1948, he warned the politicians that they were being imperialistic and that the day would come when this was going to collapse upon them. It happened blatantly in 2001 with the Le Torre Gemelli, Twin Towers. But the process has been building, accumulating over many decades now. Anyway, the open self. This concept of identity, which is identity, plurivocal, multi-voiced, polylogic identity, was foregrounded, of course, by Peirce. What did Peirce say? Peirce said the individual is an illusion, no such thing. He talks about man's glassy essence, quoting Shakespeare. The individual is many, there's no such thing as a compact individual. Victoria Welby, she also says, no, individual, the term, she questioned language, questioned terms, it means non-individual, which is wrong. The individual, the personality, subjectivity is made of many, many individuals, let's say like that. That's what she would say, okay? By the way, she also thematized mother sense. We don't have time, I can't talk to you about it, but as at the origin, let's say, of meaning and creativity and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole school, very interesting school. And then, of course, another strong reference in my work are Michael Bakhtin and Emmanuel Levinas, the masters of dialogism and alterity. When I use these terms, I'm thinking of all these authors. Dialogism, what is dialogism for Bakhtin, who spoke to the biologists of the time? Dialogism, just to give you the idea very quickly, could be translated in Bakhtin's language with such terms as interconnectivity, intercorporeality. This condition, which is a biosemiotic condition. We are obviously part of the biosphere. We are obviously part of ecology. You know, where do we think we're going without considering life in its wonderful, joyous multiplicity? We are totally dependent upon the other. And in fact, Charles Peirce is the philosopher of surrender. He talks about surrendering, you know, surrendering the subject to the other, not as an act of passivity, lack of initiative, but in my language, recognizing the other as inevitable, and therefore the condition of the need to listen. We're talking about resonance, we're talking about tuning in, let's say, with life. Exactly. We need to adopt in anthroposocial semiosis this condition of listening, interdependence, and I better stop it and keep quiet. I'm not getting on with my paper here. I'm sorry. Let's have a look. Okay, well, look, so then I go on, I say the failure of translational processes manifests in global symptoms. And so therefore I propose a social symptomatology, and I'm not going to say that. I have this other development on the basis of this concept of translation, biosemiotic, let's say, conception of translation, which is life which is translation, life is in translation, the sign is in translation, inevitably. So the second part is called the web of life, social reality, because my specific interest is anthroposocial semiosis. That's where my expertise lies, and materialistic semiotics, a semioethic perspective. This is the second part. I have some epigraphs from philosophers that I very much like. Søren Kierkegaard, who talks about the principle of, I just want to communicate these things because they help us think also, you know, we need it. These are difficult times. Kierkegaard, so he says the abstract principle of leveling. So today, communication, the dominant form of communication is communication production. The characteristic of communication production is leveling, homologation, making the whole world in its incredible diversity the same. Identity, this identity politics where identity sacrifices alterity instead of recognizing alterity and flourishing in this relationship of alterity with other alterities. So homologation is the characteristic of communication today, leveling, the lack of critical thinking, the death of languages. We're losing languages, we're losing cultures. Difference is repressed in many forms. So this is Kierkegaard speaking in the mid-19th century. The abstract principle of leveling, like the biting east wind, has no personal relation to any individual, but has only an abstract relationship, which is the same for everyone. Now, when he speaks of individual, if I use the term individual, translate singularity, alterity, somebody in his, but it's a general term, alterity, singularity, uniqueness. There, no hero suffers for others. Think about politics today. Think about the fact that the UN, the International Criminal Courts, politicians they discuss what Israel is doing. We are forced to be the witnesses of genocide and starvation. We are witnesses, therefore complicit to children dying of starvation in the middle of the civilized world, in Palestine, in Gaza. And I find this mind-boggling. How can this be? Why is this happening? Why can we not stop it? So obviously, you know, I'm looking for answers, and there are no decent answers. And I came across this philosopher who talks about leveling. There are no heroes suffers there in a leveled society. No hero suffers for others or helps them. The taskmaster of all alike is the leveling process. The master is the process, the leveling process, which itself takes on their education, this condition of homologation, communication, production, which keeps everybody in line, regimented. And the man who learns most from the leveling and himself becomes greatest does not become an outstanding man or a hero. It's not the time of heroes, in fact. That would only impede the leveling process, which is rigidly consistent to the end. He himself prevents that from happening because he has understood the meaning of leveling. He becomes a man and nothing else in the complete equalitarian sense, okay? The concept of equalitarian, we're all the same. We all have the same rights, okay? That is Kierkegaard. Then Bakhtin, the more, if we have time, I'll read the more extended, very interesting from a biosemiotic point of view passage. The more demarcation, the better. So demarcation means specificity. Specificity or alterity again, the word as I use the term alterity, singularity, uniqueness. So the more demarcation, the better, but benevolent demarcation. We need alterity. We need difference, multiplicity, diversity, variation. I've finished. I'll stop. I can stop. Yeah.
Well, we have 2 minutes for questions.
I didn't start my phone.
Briefly, thank you for mentioning CDR.
Oh, how can I not mention it? I know.
Other early mathematicians,
Yeah.
who were mathematicians. And one was at a recent conference I attended on anthropological consciousness of real life communication. There's an anthropologist, communication, and everything is at the same time.
The first course I listened to from Tom was about magic and magicians in Portugal. Thanks to you, dear.
Other questions? Yeah. Please.
Sorry.
Like your willy waving, yes. Absolutely. This is a world that is completely dominated by communication production and by capitalism. I don't know whether you know post-capitalism is extreme capitalism, that's what globalization is. And it's all about exchange, not less. What are you giving me? No. Equal exchange. Or you give
Me and I give back exactly what, which is completely against the model, for example, that we have all been exposed to when, from the moment we were born. If we are all alive today, if we are here today, it is thanks to the people, mothers or non-mothers, that nurtured us when we were in first of all in the womb and then with birth. The model, economic model that we were first exposed to is a maternal gift economy, whether we like it or not. It's a maternal gift economy. A mother who, and if not the mother, because mothers die or disappear or whatever, the nurturer, the fact that we're here proves what I'm saying. The nurturer nurtures, gives care, nurtures, without expecting anything back, because the infant is not capable of entering that paradigm, is not part of that paradigm, okay? Imagine that, well, Victoria Welby understood all this already in the 19th century because she thematizes mother sense. But in linguistics, linguistics inspires general semiotics, right? We have a development of semiotics, general semiotics through the 20th century from code or decodification semiotics, exchange semiotics, signification semiotics, which identifies at last the unintentional of signs, and then significance or interpretation semiotics, which recognizes the importance of interpretation in order to develop economy. Economy is in the model, is in the sign model. Saussure,
Can you
look
say
at
more about that?
marginalist. Yes, okay. So Ferdinand Saussure, I was saying, semiotics is construed initially on linguistics, general linguistics. The father of general linguistics is Ferdinand de Saussure, right? De Saussure read economics, marginalism. His references were in particular Pareto, Volra, and Pareto. So economy, political economy, economics is in the sign, is in our sign model. If you're referring to Saussure, to the general linguistic sign model, which translates into valorizing equal exchange, unfortunately. Therefore, communication and meaning as intention, intentional exchange, right? This was architected largely on the basis of the dialogue at the time between Saussure's understanding of language and economics. And then I didn't get to talk about what I was going to talk about. I work on materialistic semiotics. Materialistic semiotics recovers dialectical materialism. Main points of references are Marx and Engels, but who have been severely distorted. But that's another story now. We won't go into that. There are Italian theorists who are not translated into English. Petrilli, Rossilandi, Augusto Ponzio, Massimo Bonfantini. I've just finished a book which is about to appear in English called Materialistic Semiotics and Social Reality, a European School for World Peace, which presents these in English, these authors, Adam Sharp. I don't know if you know Adam Sharp, extraordinary Polish philosopher, economist, philosopher. Anyway, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.